Hello, everybody. It is Wednesday, June 5th, 2024. Welcome to episode 91 of the Old Mage MTG podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. We're running a little late this week. The gods of broadband have conspired against us. They tried to shut down the podcast, but they failed. We're back. Delay the podcast, but they cannot stop us. Who was it, Alex? Who's your internet provider that was digging up the earth outside of your house?
I don't want to call them out because I like my internet service provider a lot.
Is it Comcast?
No, I hate Comcast. They're the devil. Is it
Charter?
No. It's a local, it's a small local
okay, internet. We'll let it be then.
Yeah.
We'll let it be.
We like them.
I said Comcast and I thought you were going to say yes, and then I was going to go off on Comcast.
No, Comcast, it's the devil.
Let's pretend like it was Comcast who was trying to shut down the Old Mage MTG podcast, but they failed. We are here with episode 91. We are here to continue with our discussion of Mirage. Last week we talked about the commons and the uncommons. This week we get to the rares. But before we jump into that, I'm going to ask for your support. If you enjoy the podcast, you can support us for free by giving us a like, subscribing if you haven't already. You can do those things on YouTube, Apple Podcast, and Spotify, and also whatever podcast app you use. I don't know. I use something called Castbox. I don't know
Ronnie's podcast app?
That might exist. Any more? What do you use, Alex?
Ronnie's.
I don't believe
Ronnie's,
you.
Man.
What do you use? Are you a Spotify guy?
I use YouTube a lot, actually. I don't have a Spotify account.
Have you subscribed to our podcast on YouTube,
yes,
Alex? Okay. If not, I was going to demand right now. I was going to stop the episode. I was going to make you start a YouTube account, join the podcast. Anyways, like, subscribe. Also, if you're in the market for cardboard or cardboard accessories, I know you probably are. If you listen to this show, you buy cardboard and cardboard accessories. Please consider purchasing them using our TCG Player affiliate link. I'm going to put that affiliate link in the description below. Thank you to anybody who does that. Every week we have like 1 or 2 people that click that link. I really appreciate it. Also, I'm going to, for the last, 2-3 weeks, I've been saying, if you, listener, are out there and you have a TCG affiliate link, send it to me. DM me on Twitter at Old Mage MTG. I would like to click your affiliate link. I've been clicking other people's affiliate links for the last 6 months. Every time I buy cards, I click the link. Nobody sends me their link though, so FPalooza MTG on YouTube is getting all my money.
We're all about the community support here.
So send me a link. If you don't, it's just going to keep going to FPalooza, which is not a bad thing. Anyways, that's it for the shilling today. Before we get into Mirage, I have one more thing to talk about. I have a follow-up. In the intro last week, Alex, I mentioned that the setting for Mirage was the supercontinent of Jamura. Alex, you then said you love supercontinents. I remember that. And now I'm going to ask you today to name your favorite supercontinent.
Jamura.
No. I was thinking if you love supercontinents so much, you should be able to name a super. Okay, there we go. Name another one.
Another one?
Yeah, and another one.
Eurogea.
I don't think that exists. I only know 2 supercontinents, so I know one more than you. Gondwana land.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Oh, and I think Laurasia might be a third.
Oh, okay.
Potentially.
Oh, I'm learning so much.
Anyways.
I'm going to have to go learn more about supercontinents after the podcast now.
Those are the big 3. So, you don't need to. If you know Pangea, Gondwana land, and what I believe is called Laurasia, you're good to go. I mentioned the setting for Mirage, supercontinent of Jamura. I then said that was the setting for all 3 sets in the Mirage block. Mirage, Visions, and Prophecy. And then I immediately went, wait, why am I saying Prophecy? It was because I wrote Prophecy down in the show notes. I wrote all 3 sets in the Mirage block, Mirage, Visions, Prophecy, but I know Prophecy is not the 3rd set in the Mirage block. That is Weatherlight. I realized why I wrote Prophecy there. It's not the 3rd set in the Mirage block, but it is the 3rd set that's set on the supercontinent of Jamura.
Ah,
So Mirage and Visions were set on Jamura. Then the
not
Weatherlight, I
Weatherlight.
think they got on some ship and they floated away. And then years later, they came back and the developers made another set that was set on the supercontinent of Jamura. That set was Prophecy. So that's
Nice.
why I wrote Prophecy in the show notes. I confused myself. I learned a fact. I wrote it in the show notes. I forgot that fact. I made a mistake while we were recording. And then I went back later on, realized why I made that mistake.
That's a full hero cycle there.
The hero's journey.
Yeah.
So that's the first follow up.
I want to go back to Jamura, by the way. New set, just throwing that out there. Any new sets that want to take us back there? I'm game. I like it.
I don't know actually if they've gone there again since
Yeah, I don't know
Prophecy. I'm
about the
not sure.
modern sets, but yeah. I haven't seen one in a while. In the past few years, we haven't. So
No, since we've been back in the game, what, like a year and a half, 2 years ago,
yeah,
following it.
anytime I'm ready.
Haven't seen it. Second follow up. When discussing the commons and the uncommons last week, I think I should have at least mentioned this group of cards, the charms. So I want to make up for that. I want to mention the charms. The charms came out in Mirage for the very first time. This was a new type of spell that was first introduced into Mirage. For a single mana, you could choose one of 3 effects. They had one for each color. Chaos Charm, Ebony Charm, Ivory Charm, Sapphire Charm, Seedling Charm. I don't think about these very often. I do play some charms in pre-modern Magic, but I never see the Mirage ones. I think for the most part, they were overshadowed by future charm cycles.
Yeah.
The one that I do like is Seedling Charm, the one in green. For 1 green mana, you can choose one, return target creature enchantment to owner's hand. That's not very useful. Or regenerate
What?
target green creature, or target creature gains trample until end of turn. That's what I would
I
most use
think
this for, but
yeah, the third probably is maybe the best, but the first one I kind of like because it's sort of like a Rancor ability before Rancor existed. So if you had some like really good creature enchantments that you had but didn't want to lose, then you can like boomerang them with that.
you could use it on your own enchantment. But then, yeah, I mean, then you need to set up, then you need to have 2 cards in your hand to make
Yeah,
what would be a 1-turn Rancor. So,
yeah.
it's not nearly as good as Rancor, but it could come in handy sometimes. Chaos Charm could also come in handy sometimes. That's the red one for 1 red. Target creature is unaffected by summoning sickness this turn, or it deals 1 damage to target creature or destroy target wall. So, you could use it to pick off a Birds of Paradise or a Land Worm or something.
I don't hate that. I don't know what the other options are for like an instant, like a low cost instant that gives you haste. Uh, and having some versatility that might make it,
Yeah.
like comparable.
I mean, there's a card in Premodern that gets some play still sometimes. I think it's called Lava Dart. So you don't have the optionality with this, but I
Okay.
think Lava Dart is just 1 red, does 1 damage. Let me click this. I'm looking Lava Dart from Judgment, 1 red. Oh, okay. I know why it's better. Lava Dart deals 1 damage to target creature or player. So Chaos Charm is just target creature. But that's probably what I'd use it for most of the time. But Lava Dart has flashback, sacrifice a mountain, flashback. So you can pick up 2 Birds
Okay.
of Paradise, 2 Land Orioles. That's Lava Dart. These are the charms. First charm cycle. There have been future charm cycles. Some of the charm cycles that have come, pretty much maybe all of the charm cycles that were printed after this were more powerful, but sometimes they cost 2 or 3 mana, depending on the charm cycle. There's a charm cycle, and I can't remember what it is. Plane Chase, maybe, with the dragon hands. You know what I'm talking about? Like, isn't there like a Rith's charm and
Yeah.
all those? Can't remember if those are 2 mana or
Omar's
3 mana.
charm.
Yeah, Drillmarsh. There is a Drillmarsh charm. Drillmarsh. Drillmarsh charm. I just need to look up. I want to remind myself whether or not they were 2 or 3 mana. They're 3 mana.
Yeah, yeah, one each of three.
Yeah. Drillmarsh charm is 1 white, 1 blue, 1 black. They are much better, but the effects are much more powerful, but they're 3 mana.
Yeah.
Anyways, I didn't have much to say about the charms. I just wanted to mention them because it was a type of cycle that we've seen many times since then. And it started right here in Mirage.
When this came out, I liked it a lot, even though they were a little bit underwhelming. I like the idea of it because of the versatility. It's cool to have a
Hmm.
card that can do, you can pull out in multiple situations to, maybe save the day.
Hmm. But those are my two follow-ups. Do you have any follow-ups from last episode, Alex? I don't
No,
think so.
no.
Okay. So we're going to move on to the rares then. The rares of Mirage. We're not going to talk about all the rares. We're just going to talk about a select few that I wanted to discuss. Some that I enjoy, some that I learned new things about, some that I just wanted to mention. The first one I'm going to talk about is the most expensive rare from Mirage.
Ever. Oh,
It is Lion's Eye Diamond. Lion's Eye Diamond.
almost the most expensive rare ever.
When I was reading about Lion's Eye Diamond, I think I knew this before, then forgot about it and relearned it. I do that a lot. When I was reading about Lion's Eye Diamond, I was reminded that this card in the development phase was originally intended to be the sixth Mox.
Wow.
Before Mox Diamond was printed in Stronghold, R&D had plans to print something called the Mox Crystal in Mirage. It was zero casting cost and it could be tapped for one colorless mana. The downside was that if another Mox Crystal was played, the copy on the battlefield would be destroyed. So you could find yourself in a Mox Crystal duel. I can imagine people
Ox off. Yeah.
playing multiple Mox Crystals, destroying each other's Mox Crystals by playing their own.
Yeah.
But it was yanked before the set went to print. They made it in the R&D phase. They played with it. They decided not to print it.
Well, I'm sorry, just one side note here. I sort of feel like if they had made this card, it quickly or eventually would have been restricted, you know?
I
So
think so too. Yeah.
the getting destroyed when you played another one would then really only be down to if you and your opponent, I have one and you have one, and whoever
Yeah.
plays it second destroys the other ones.
Yeah.
But anyways, that was what I thought.
That would be my assumption too, that eventually it would get restricted. But usually they like to let people play the cards for a little while before they restrict them or ban them.
Yeah.
Uh, but anyways, the Mox Crystal, it was never made. Not at least not officially. I have seen some copies of Mox Crystal somewhere on the internet. I think they were made for some fan made formats.
Okay.
But instead of the Mox Crystal, they decided to print another zero casting cost artifact in Mirage. That zero casting cost artifact is this one that you see right before your eyes, Lion's Eye Diamond. It is zero casting cost artifact. You sacrifice Lion's Eye Diamond, then discard your hand, add 3 mana of any one color to your mana pool. Play this ability as a mana source. This is the original wording from the Mirage set. The first printing was in Mirage. It's the only printing because it is on the reserve list. It has a rating of 4.425 on Gather. Current market price of $461.25, which blows my damn mind. Side note, Alex. I was thinking about what this card was worth when we were first opening Mirage packs and what it's worth now. And I thought to myself, I wonder what the highest return on investment card in MTG was. If you were to buy the card like within a year after it was printed or pull it out of a pack, let's say, and then hold it until now, what has gone up the most? Black Lotus pops into my head, but like Lion's Eye Diamond can't be that far off because, as probably a lot of people know, this was unplayed bulk when Mirage came out, and it was remained unplayed bulk for at least a few years after that, 2-3 years after that.
Yeah.
I and you, like we could have picked up copies of this card. I never had any
Yeah.
interest in getting copies of this card. Not a lot of people played it. It wasn't even something you were particularly excited about if you pulled it out of a pack. There were some
Yeah.
people who went after it because there were always some people in Magic who like the oddities. They go after the strange things. They think of ways to break them. And there were also people who were forward looking who would say, okay, this card is so weird. There's nothing I could do with it now. But who knows what's going to happen 5 years from now, 10 years from now. There are
Right.
always collectors like that. But it was
Right.
cheap.
I barely remember it. I definitely remember the name of the card,
Mhm.
but I didn't like want to have one, or probably couldn't have told you what it did, until a couple years ago now when we started getting back into the game.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember the name, and I just sort of felt like it was something that they had, you know, tried to introduce, and it kind of like fizzled out and was, I don't know. But I was not paying attention.
I remembered it because I remember it being the disappointing Black Lotus because, it's 0 casting cost and it adds 3 mana. So you automatically compare it to Black Lotus. Everybody
Yeah.
wanted the Black Lotus. We couldn't get the Black Lotus for the most part, although you did have a Black Lotus and you sold it. You don't have it anymore, Alex. That was a shame that you did that. But anyways,
Thanks, Steve.
Lion's Eye Diamond was like a disappointment. It was like, oh, I can't get the Black Lotus, but oh, wow, I can get this card that I don't want to play and that I can't do anything with. Whoopity do.
With the lady holding the diamond in front of the bathroom tile.
I like this artist, Margaret Organ Keene. She has some really cool art in Homelands. I remember a lot of her work from Homelands.
Yeah, I remember
Yeah.
her doing some cards that I like for sure.
She likes this bathroom tile style in all of her art. Like there's always bathroom tile somewhere in the background. But how did this card go from unplayed bulk? We were talking about how it was unplayed to a $500 powerhouse. That's a question that I had in my mind when you and I came back to Magic a year and a half, 2 years ago, and we saw the price of this card. I looked into it. Some people might already know this, but for those that don't, you can learn along with us. There were a couple things I learned about when I looked into this. One, I found that the first change that helped make this card a powerhouse was the introduction of the stack in 1999. This changed the way that Lion's Eye Diamond can be used. This happened with 6th edition. At this point in 1999, you and I weren't really buying new cards or paying much attention to rules changes. We were playing a little bit, but if we did play, we just kind of played using the same old rules we always played when we started with Revised. I didn't really know what was going on with 6th edition. I never opened a 6th edition pack. I never looked at a 6th edition rule book. I
No, we were
didn't
pretty
know
much out
anything.
of it at that point.
I didn't know anything about the stack until you and I started playing again, like a year and a half, 2 years ago. And I was like, what is the stack? So I've started to learn the basics of the stack. But I'm not that familiar with all the formalized rules of the stack. I did find, when I was doing my Lion's Eye Diamond research, some important rules about how spells are cast. This is different than how we cast spells back in the day, when we were apparently using something called batching. I don't ever remember that term, but this is apparently what we did back in the day. We batched our spells instead of putting them on the
Yeah, I
stack.
vaguely remember hearing that maybe in the rule book or somewhere. I always just thought of like first in, last out.
But one important rule about how spells are cast, I found this in the rules book to Magic the Gathering. Rule 601.2. It states, to cast a spell is to take it from where it is, usually the hand, and put it on the stack and pay its costs so that it will eventually resolve and have its effect. Casting a spell includes proposal of the spell and determination and payment of costs. So that's 601.2. The first step in casting the spell is to take it from where it is, usually in the hand, and put it on the stack. You determine the payment of the and costs. Wait, sorry. Proposal of the spell and determination and payment of the cost. You determine all of the costs in steps 601.2 F through H. So I went all the way down to 601.2 G. It says if the total cost includes a mana payment, so when you're going through all the costs of the spell after you put it on the stack, If the total cost includes a mana payment, the player then has the chance to activate mana abilities. So when you cast a spell, you start by putting it on the stack, and then you go through several sub-steps until you get to the sub-step where you actually pay the mana to cast the spell. So technically, what people do now that the stack exists is they put the spell first on the stack, then later on, they activate mana abilities, which do not go on the stack, to pay for that spell. That's not really how you and I played when we were kids back in the day. We would start, I mean, there was no stack, so we wouldn't be like, oh, am I putting the spell on the stack and then I'm paying for the mana? We just start by tapping our lands to generate the mana, and then you play the spell. Doesn't go on the hand.
Mm-hmm.
But this is apparently how it's formalized now these days, even though when I watch people play, I still see them start by tapping the lands. Nobody announces that they're putting a spell on the stack and then generate the mana. You know, people don't really play in such a formalized way. But in the background, this is how we're supposed to be doing everything, apparently.
Yeah, that's interesting.
But this introduction of the stack and the fact that you put the spell on the stack and then activate mana abilities to pay for spells on the stack really allowed Lion's Eye Diamond to flourish for the first time. You know, back when we first saw this card before the stack existed, this little clause here in the rules text, or in the text of the card, sacrifice Lion's Eye Diamond, discard your hand, add 3 mana of any one color to your mana pool, meant that
what am I going to do now?
You couldn't cast any spells from your hand with the mana that you generated when you sacrificed Lion's Eye Diamond.
Yeah, you're just dumping it into activated abilities.
Dumping it into activated abilities, which was one of probably the very few things we could do with the card at that time. I don't know what we could do with it other than just dump it into activated abilities. But after the stack, you could announce that you were going to cast a spell, put the spell on the stack, then sack the Lion's Eye Diamond and use these 3 mana towards casting the spell that you put on the stack. So I started looking into all the broken things people have done with LED over the years. I found a great thread on a website called casualplayers.org. The thread was written by somebody there who goes by the name Oversoul. He has all sorts of really great threads on this website. He had a thread titled Magic Memories, Lion's Eye Diamond. And he went through all the things that people do with Lion's Eye Diamond, that really all the broken things people do with Lion's Eye Diamond nowadays and in earlier times. There are many reasons why the card became so desirable. It's mostly because of what LED can do in different combo decks. I want to read a statement that he wrote in this thread. He said, LED is a powerful mana accelerant that is essentially 100% locked in as a combo deck tool. Black Lotus can be used generically to cast Sarah Angel faster or whatever, but Lion's Eye Diamond needs proper planing and synergy in order to function. And the discard aspect gives it additional functionality beyond even what Black Lotus can provide for a graveyard field deck. So if you're wondering what makes LED special, think combo decks, think discard, think graveyard. Most of the decks that LED shines in fits into, you know, these three categories of decks. I was going through his thread. There's so many things people do with LED nowadays. I'm not going to go through all of them. That could take up like multiple episodes of the podcast. I'm sure we'll get into other things people do with this in future episodes. I just want to highlight one, and it's the oldest one I can find. I'm going to start there because that's what we do on the Old Mage MTG podcast. We talk about old stuff. And this was really the first deck that LED had a prominent place in. And this was, like I said, just when this stack was introduced, and all of a sudden you could exploit this card in new ways. LED had a prominent place in the Broken Jar deck that was built around Memory Jar. This, I think, was the first major tournament deck that LED played an important role in. If you don't remember what the Broken Jar deck is, you can look right here on MTG Wiki. This is a extended version of the Broken Jar deck. This was the deck that couple different people brought to Grand Prix Vienna in 1999. I think it was designed and played by Randy Bueller and Eric Lauer. We first learned about Memory Jar and this deck in episode 8 of the podcast. This was back when we were titled the Old Men Magic Podcast. The episode is Memory Jar and some recent investments in cardboard. We talked about Memory Jar and some cards that we just bought. This is in general how the deck works. Using Lotus Petal, Mana Vault, Dark Ritual, Mox Diamond, and Lion's Eye Diamond before errata. These are all mana accelerants. The deck quickly builds up enough mana to tinker for or cast Memory Jar. Activating the jar would result in even more mana cards and repeating the process, which could also be helped by Yawgmoth's Will, replaying the previous mana cards, Tinkers, and Jars. During the repeated activation of jars, the deck would at some point use Vampiric Tutor to find Megrim and play it. So you use a ton of fast mana in tutors to cast your Memory Jar and Megrim. And at the end of all this, your opponent discards their hand to Memory Jar, and they take lethal damage from Megrim because of all the cards they just discarded. So how do you use Lion's Eye Diamond as fast mana to execute this combo? That's where the introduction of the stack comes in. This is also from Oversoul in that thread on casualplayers.org. He said there was a kind of late 90s limbo in which the new rules allowed a mana ability to be used for a spell on the stack. But Lion's Eye Diamond had not yet received an errata to prevent it from being used in this way. So this meant that back when Broken Jar was legal, one could put a spell on the stack. Then you could activate LED and use the LED mana to pay for the spell on the stack. And that spell that you put on the stack wouldn't be discarded because it wasn't in your hand. It was on the stack.
Right.
So that's very weird.
Yes.
The stack was introduced. All of a sudden, LED was very similar to a Black Lotus, which was not the original intention of the people who designed the card and not at all how people could use it from 96 to 99.
Yeah.
What did you say, Alex?
I said, I feel like that. Yeah.
No, it wasn't at all the intention, the original intention of the card.
Yeah.
Like they were not trying to reprint Black Lotus. They were trying to print something that would get people excited, be like, oh, this is just like a Black Lotus, and then be very disappointed because they realized it didn't work at all like a Black Lotus. So this is the first, that's essentially how LED became broken, I think. And this is the first broken deck that utilized LED in a way similar to how people utilized Black Lotus. As you might be able to tell from some of the things I've said so far, LED does not work like this any longer. It was errated to more closely match the original vision that the designers had for the card. Again, from Oversold on casualplayers.org. The intention of Lion's Eye Diamonds was to force you to discard your hand before getting the mana. That was the original intention, so that you couldn't use the mana to cast spells. You had to use it for other things, whatever those things might be.
Yeah.
The 6th edition rules made it possible to use LED while a spell was already in the process of being cast, circumventing that intention. So LED was given errata that required it to be cast at instant speed, returning it to its original functionality. So if you look up Lion's Eye Diamond now, I'm going to pull it up on Gather. You can see the Oracle text. Lion's Eye Diamond.
Trying to target green spells for Steve.
I don't know. I don't know why I have Flash Freeze pulled up, actually. Lion's Eye Diamond currently says, well, it's a zero casting cost artifact, and then it says, sacrifice Lion's Eye Diamond, comma, discard your hand. Add 3 mana of any one color to your mana pool. Activate this ability only anytime you could cast an instant. So it used to
the lion
end,
in the background is now sleepy and laying down.
I didn't even notice that. It used to say play this ability as a mana source. No longer says that. It now says activate this ability only anytime you can cast an instant.
Sleepy lions only.
So there was a brief period of time where LED had its time in the sun. and they neutered it. They neutered the poor lion. I just thought that was interesting. So the memory jar shenanigans no longer viable. Can't do that with Lion's Eye Diamond anymore. Can't use it to cast spells that are in your hand, even with the stack around. You can't stick the spell on the stack. That seems weird to me. The spell's in your hand, buddy. I see it right there. You're telling me it's on the stack. What are you talking about? What's the stack? You could still do broken things with it. We'll probably talk about some of the other broken things later in future episodes when we get to those later sets with some of the cards that people use to exploit Lion's Eye Diamond now. But just know that it no longer works the way that it did in 1999. Now people exploit the fact that you have to discard the cards. You know, that's become an exploitable part of Lion's Eye Diamond. But that's LED. I learned a lot. I learned a lot about LED over the past week or so. And that is the most expensive card in Mirage. Never would have expected it. When I got back into the game, I was like, what in the hell is going on, Alex? Who's playing this card and why? Next most expensive card in Mirage is the next rare that I want to talk about. And it's also, it's another card that I was like, well, how are people playing this? Like, who's playing this card? Why are so many people playing this card? It's more obviously strong, but still, it was much harder to exploit back in 1996 compared to today. Much harder. The card is Phyrexian Dreadnought. A current bane of pre-modern Magic players. Phyrexian Dreadnought is also an artifact. It's one colorless artifact creature. It's 12/12 and it has trample. When Phyrexian Dreadnought comes into play, sacrifice any number of creatures with total power of 12 or more, or bury Phyrexian Dreadnought. First printing in Mirage. Again, the only printing of this card is in Mirage. It's on the reserve list. I say only printing, but it does have like some of those goofy like DCI Judge promo. Yeah. There's a Judge promo. But it's a reserve list card. Rating of 4.593 on Gatherer. Current market price of $153.33. When I looked this up the other day, I was like, holy shit. I didn't realize it had gone way back up again. I knew that it had dropped below 100, but
that's a pretty severe spike recently.
Doubled. It doubled since November 2023. It got back down to $75. Now it's 153. I love and I hate this card. When it first appeared, it was an oddity that you could brew around if you wanted to. There wasn't a whole lot to do with this card other than potentially like sacrifice a bunch of creatures to it.
Yeah, play like some weenie deck and, you know, dump a bunch of little creatures to bring this guy out, but then that, you know, doesn't help you so much because you have to play it later in the game and then you don't care about it being one casting cost as much anymore.
Yeah. That's what makes it so brutal. It's one casting cost for a potential 12/12 trampler. But if you can't get it out till later in the game, you might be dead by the time you get this out. And you got to sacrifice a bunch of creatures to it, lose card advantage. You had Reality Ripple, which was printed in Mirage. That was one colorless, one blue, phase out a permanent or phase out a creature. I'm gonna look this up. Reality Ripple. So you always had that ability, you know, to phase this guy out. But this was just one card. Why is it when I look up Reality Ripple on MTG stocks, it pulls up Reality Ripple in Italian, I think. And it's literally the only option. It's the only one that comes up. But it's one colorless and one blue. El Artefacto, Criatura o Tierra Objetivo Cambia de Face y Sala de Juego. Is this Spanish? What is this? You know what I'm talking about?
I can't see it, but
Ruptura de la Realidad.
Doesn't look like Spanish.
Yeah, it doesn't. But it doesn't look like Italian. I thought Italian originally, and I started reading it, and I'm like, is this Italian?
I can't see the card.
Look that up, Alex, on your end.
What am I looking up?
Ruputura de la Realidad. Tell me what language that is. Or read Reality Ripple. Your choice. I'm going to go to Scryfall. I'm going to type in Reality Ripple.
Reality Ripple. Target artifact, creature, or land
phases out. So that is it's one colorless, one blue. So it's 2 mana. So now you've gotten to the point where you have to have 3 mana in your hand. And then you could potentially play Phyrexian Dreadnought for 1, and then cast Reality Ripple as an instant to phase this fella out before you needed to sacrifice other creatures to him.
Okay.
And then
Wonder how quickly people figured that out.
I think it was always known.
Okay.
It was always the case when we were talking about phasing last week. It was always the case that, remember, when something phases back in, it's not necessarily coming back into play or entering the battlefield. So like enter the battlefield triggers don't happen. I think that was always the case. So like when Phyrexian Dreadnought comes back into play, you don't have to sacrifice. You don't have to pay this cost. So you don't have to sacrifice the creatures to it. Sorry, because it's not actually coming back into play. It's phasing back in. And I think that people always were aware of that. But the problem is you only had 4 Reality Ripples, right? So you could build a deck around this, but it wasn't always the most consistent, for Reality Ripples or for Phyrexian Dreadnoughts. There was another thing that I think people started doing with it very early on too, which was playing it with Illusionary Mask. You could cheat it in with Illusionary Mask as well. But nobody owned Illusionary Masks, so we just didn't do this. And this is a thing sometimes you see in like old frame formats too. People will play Dreadnought decks based around Illusionary Mask. They'll use that to cheat it in. But what's happened is over the years, it's just become too easy to cheat out. Like there are many other cards like Reality Ripple that have been printed that have similar effects and sometimes for even less than 2 mana. In Premodern, you can stifle Phyrexian Dreadnought. You can Vision Charm Phyrexian Dreadnought, both for 1 mana, and you can Reality Ripple it. So it's like really easy to, on turn 1 or 2, play Dreadnought Vision Charm, Dreadnought Stifle. And then maybe have like a blue counterspell that you can pitch to protect it. So it's become like too easy to get a 12/12 trampler out consistently by like turns 2 and turns 3. Turns 2 or 3,
Yeah.
So that's where we're at with Phyrexian Dreadnought. That's why it's gotten so expensive. It was always a very interesting card, but over the years, it's just gotten easier and easier to exploit. And there are more and more people that play it now. I do want to start playing Stifle Knot decks. It'll give me some blue mage practice while satisfying my aggro tendencies. That's why I think, Alex. I just find myself always wanting to brew, and like every time I sit down to play with you or something, I don't want to bust out 12/12 Dreadnought decks because it just kind of seems like.
Oh no, I don't take offense to that. I don't know. Like,
well, I know, but you're playing a lot of brews too. Everyone, I will take it out sometimes because I want to learn it. I want to practice with it. But it's not going to be that fun when you like bust out a deck that you just put together like last week that you're trying out.
Yeah.
And then I have like 12/12 Dreadnought.
I got you.
Net decked, pretty much.
But I mean, this card in existence and having like a realistic place in the meta makes me like, I will say it probably ups the amount of removal I play. Like,
yes.
Just this card existing and being viable, I'm playing more removal now.
It's in my head. I was telling some people today that Goblin Lackey lives rent-free in my head.
Yeah, I saw that, yeah.
And Phyrexian Dreadnought also lives rent-free in my head. A lot of times I'm building decks and I'm like, how does this deal with the Dreadnought? How does this deal with Lackey?
Yeah, I'm worried about the goblins a lot.
What language? I need to figure out what language this is. Well, I'll do that later. Next card. I was going to say next episode. Next rare I wanted to talk about from Mirage. Shallow Grave, Alex. Shallow Grave.
Yes.
We've mentioned this card on the show before, of
I
course.
love it. I was stoked about this card. For some reason, I don't think I knew about this card back when we were playing Mirage. Like it was definitely under my radar. Um, but I
I never
noticed it
did.
more now in the newer era.
I never did much with the graveyard.
It's gone up in price recently.
I know I saw that too, and I was like, this was a $25 card just not that long ago. Last time I looked at it, it was a $25 card. No, it's a $50 card. Anyways, it's one colorless, one black, instant. Put the top creature card from your graveyard into play as though it were just played. That creature is unaffected by summoning sickness. Remove that creature from the game at end of any turn. Good help is hard to dig up, is the flavor text. Good help is very easy to dig up if you have this spell in your hand. It just costs 2 mana, one colorless, one black. First printing is in Mirage. It's the only printing. It's a reserve list card, rating of 4.323 on Gatherer. Current market price of $49.17. That's crazy.
Dang.
What do I have to say about this card? A couple things, just a couple general things. A useful effect. Graveyard decks will never go away. There will always be people playing graveyard effects. They'll always be looking for cards like this. And I think this is a best in breed when it comes to graveyard effects. You know, they're not going to get much better than this. It has low casting costs and it's an instant. I think it's going to remain useful as long as MTG is around. So, you know, what I'm saying is you could buy shallow graves and they're only going to go up in price. You'll never lose money on shallow graves.
Not financial advice.
Not financial advice. I will say this as somebody who has 2 shallow graves. I did put money into shallow graves. I bought them for
I think I just have
$25.
one.
So far, I've doubled my money. Not financial advice. Don't put all your money into shallow graves. With fast mana and buried alive, you can do some crazy things, and you won't even care if the creature disappears after one turn. You don't even care. There are a lot of cases where you really don't care. There are a lot of cases where creatures, they come in a turn, they do insane things these days. I can't even think of any
Oh yeah.
right now, but there's a ton of creatures in modern Magic that do like 7 insane things when they hit the battlefield.
Yep.
If you're just playing old school, you can even use something like Nicol Bolas. You know,
Oh yeah, yeah.
early buried alive Nicol Bolas, shallow grave, attacking on turn 2, causing your opponent to discard
Any
their
of
hand.
the big invasion dragons.
The big invasion dragon.
Um, you know, yeah, anything that has an enter the battlefield effect, you could use it on like a deranged hermit just to make yourself some squirrel tokens.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, things with enter the battlefield effects and things that I think have like effects when they attack and get through.
Yeah.
And you can use them as a surprise and like make your opponent discard their hand or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. I was thinking of Nicol Bolas because of the discard your hand effect. Because I mean,
Yeah.
how brutal is that? Early turn damage plus a mind twist. Second turn. Anyway, it's just an all around great card. $50. I wish it wasn't $50 right now. Next Mirage rare that I wanted to talk about is Final Fortune. Final Fortune, Alex. I know
They
this is coming.
reprinted Time Walk?
They reprinted Time Walk. It's a red Time Walk. It's a fixed Time Walk. For 2 red, you can buy this instant, and you could take another turn after this one when you play it. Well, you can't buy the instant for 2 red. Why'd I say that? For 2 red, you can play this instant, and then you can take another turn after this one. You lose the game at the end of that turn. First printing is in Mirage. It's been reprinted in 6th and 7th editions, I believe. And you can get a gold bordered version from a World Championship deck. Has a rating of 4.144 on Gatherer. Current market price of $31.67. I'm surprised that this card is as expensive as it is too. Imagine if this was reserve list. What do I have to say about this card? I say it's pure red. You don't care if you lose the game at the end of the extra turn because you don't play this card unless you have a way to blow your opponent up anyways.
Yeah, definitely pure red. Yeah, I like it.
It just helps you win the game 1 turn sooner. I did see a comment on Gatherer when I was looking up this card. That this was not a card you wanted if your opponent has Mindslaver. I didn't know what Mindslaver was. And now I'm having deja vu. I wonder if we've done this very same thing on the show before. I wonder if on the show in a previous episode we've looked up Final Fortune and you've been reading Gatherer comments and you've said something to me about Mindslaver and I've looked up Mindslaver.
I don't
And now
think so.
okay.
Because I've heard of that card, but I don't know what it does.
But I looked this card up. This would be quite funny. Mindslaver is a card from Mirrodin. It's 6 colorless, legendary artifact. You pay 4 colors and tap it, sacrifice Mindslaver, you control target players next turn.
I love it.
You know,
Word of command.
good luck with your Final Fortune.
Yeah.
But anyways, that's Final Fortune. That's Mindslaver from Mirrodin. I'm excited to get to Mirrodin in the not too distant future, Alex. I think there's lots of good stuff in Mirrodin that we don't know anything about. It's all new to us. There's so much to discover still when you've been away from the game for
I wish we
25
had
years.
old packs that we had like
We can.
bought even though we weren't playing back then and saved for one day when we started to play.
I don't know how much a Mirrodin pack costs, but I'm sure we could scrape together money and buy one Mirrodin pack and open it on the show or something. Next card I want to talk about is Cursed Totem, another card that is obnoxiously expensive. And this just happened recently, actually. Well, it looks like it happened prior too. And then went back down. And it happened again recently. And it looks like it's coming back down. Cursed Totem is 2 colorless artifact. Players cannot play any creature abilities requiring an activation cost. First printing is a Mirage, reprinted in 6th edition, I believe. Maybe in 5th edition too. No, just 6th edition and Modern Horizons 2. Has a rating of 4.110 on Gather, a current market price of $19.72, which is insane. Right before this most recent spike happened, I bought 2 copies for I think like $2 or $2.50.
Damn it.
And then
You're so smart.
and then it just started going crazy. And then I was like, oh man, I don't have my play set yet. But then I thought about it and I'm like, I just bought 2 at the beginning because I don't think I'll ever be in a situation where I want 4 Cursed Totems. Like for me, it's a sideboard card. And I don't think I ever want more than 2 in my sideboard. I think that's plenty. And I think it's a fabulous sideboard card.
Oh yeah, great sideboard, great niche card.
Would have come in handy against you the other day to shut down all of your Elf and Druid abilities when you were playing me. When I had my Spirit of the Night deck, Alex, and you were playing that mono green or the green blue Druid decks. Nantuko decks, really, that had a lot of druids. It was the mono green one, especially because you had your Creon Rangers going, you had that Centaur going that you could tap for mana, you had the Priest of Titania. All that stuff is shut off with Cursed Totem. This is great when you're playing against any elf deck, especially, but a lot of other stuff as well.
I'm sure some of the, goblin cards would get shut down by that. Abilities requiring an activation cost includes any tapping abilities of any creature, right?
I believe it's any tapping ability.
Okay.
Like
Llanowar elves are shut down. Birds of Paradise.
I'm looking at rules here. Like to tap a permanent for mana is to activate a mana ability of that permanent. A mana ability can be an activated ability, and a tap ability is an activated ability.
Okay.
But not all activated abilities are tap abilities, so that's clear. But I think
just
all tap
pay 1 mana.
abilities are activated abilities. So like, yeah, any Llanowar elf this shuts down. I think it's gonna shut down a goblin sharpshooter. You mentioned goblins. It should shut down a goblin sharpshooter. You got to
Shuts it all down. Good. All right.
Also, Ruptura de la Realidad. Reality Ripple. That was Spanish. I don't know why I was looking at that and I was like, is this Spanish? But it didn't quite look Spanish to me. I was like, is it Italian? Is it Portuguese? That's Spanish.
Well, you don't know all the Spanish words, so.
I don't know all the Spanish words, but usually I can look at something and be like, I think this is Spanish. Anyways, Cursed Totem. That's Cursed Totem. Very strong sideboard card. Too expensive right now. Wait until it comes down to $5 or lower, because I think it will.
Okay. All right.
Financial advice.
Financial advice.
That is financial. I don't usually give financial advice, but I will say don't buy cursed totems for $20. That's my financial advice. I think that's good financial advice, actually. Next rare that I really love from Mirage is a rare that I never play with, even though I say I really love it, but I want to start playing with it. And Alex, I did just sneak it into 2 decks
Oh,
recently.
I know we've talked about a lot.
Tombstone Stairwell is 2 colorless, 2 black, an enchant world, cumulative upkeep of 1 colorless and 1 black. During each upkeep, each player puts into play a tomb spawn token for each summon card in his or her graveyard. Treat these tokens as 2/2 black creatures that are unaffected by summoning sickness and count as zombies. At end of any turn, or if Tombstone Stairwell leaves play, bury all of these tokens. So I know we talked about this in one of our zombie episodes, but it's a card that has beneficial effects for both you and your opponents, but you can design your deck so it's asymmetric. The benefits are asymmetric. 4.315 on Gatherer, current market price of $19.09. It is a reserve list card too. What do I have to say about this card? It's a unique finisher for black. With all the sacrifice effects in black, you should be able to have more summon cards in your graveyard. I have 2 bad decks that I just put a copy of this in. Both decks revolve around sacrificing. The one is a deck I have not played yet. Something I'm messing around with. It's a Hecatome deck. I'm still
Ah,
trying to build a Hecatome deck. I haven't succeeded yet in making anything remotely playable. But I'm like, maybe I put this in the Hecatome deck. Get some kind of benefit for the 4 creatures that I have to sacrifice to bring out the Hecatome. 3 mana. Play the Hecatome, sacrifice creatures, then next turn play the Tombstone Stairwell. I don't know. Not the best idea. I'm trying to figure out a way to build a playable Hecatome deck. The next deck I put it in is a deck that you just faced the other day, Alex. It is my Spirit of the Night deck that summons Spirit of the Night by sacrificing a Feral Shadow, a Breath Stealer, and an Urborg Panther. I know that's terrible. Leave me alone. I can now sacrifice 3 creatures to summon 1 and then cast a Tombstone Stairwell. So I get some benefit for those 3 creatures I just put in the graveyard
yeah.
beyond the Spirit of the Night. This card's gone up from like $5 to almost $20 in a short period of time. There's been renewed interest in this card for the last couple months due to a card from Outlaws of Thunder Junction. I don't know if you knew that, Alex.
No.
It's a card called Camball. I don't know how to pronounce his name. Camball Profiteering Mayor. He's a mayor. He profiteers.
Mayor.
For 1 colorless, 1 white, and 1 black, you can play a 2/4 legendary creature who's also a human advisor. And whenever 1 or more tokens enters the battlefield under your opponent's control, for each of them, create a tapped token that's a copy of it. This ability triggers only once each turn. Whenever 1 or more tokens enter the battlefield under your control, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. So yeah, your opponent's making zombie tokens too from the Tombstone Stairwell, but for every zombie token your opponent makes that dies at the end of the turn, you get to create a tapped token that's a copy of it that doesn't die at the end of the turn. Well, maybe it does because it's a copy. I don't know. To figure that out. But more importantly, every time you make a zombie token from Tombstone Stairwell, you do 1 damage, or your opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. So it's like, just benefits from tokens. Anything that can make a lot of tokens, this guy gives you a lot of benefits.
Okay, neat.
I also mentioned, I mentioned Asmir, a Holy Avenger on Twitter. And at MTG Banding on Twitter told me that somebody used Tombstone Stairwell with Asmir, a Holy Avenger in a recent Premodern Spice Paradise webcam league. That must have been a black, white, green deck. Asmira gets +1/+1 for every 1 of your zombie tokens when it hits the graveyard. That's good. Know what I'm
That's
talking
good.
about, Alex? Know what I'm
That's
talking
good.
about? Okay. Next, rare from Mirage is Hall of Gemstone. We've talked about this recently too. I wanted to bring this up because in my research that I've been doing over the past week or so on Mirage, I found that this card was very different during the R&D phase of Mirage. It almost made green a card draw powerhouse. I found this in an old issue of The Duelist. They said some individual cards had to be reworked as well. They were talking to some people who were involved in R&D during Mirage. Hall of Gemstone was originally called Second Sight, Rose explains. It used to have very different powers. You named the top card of your library whenever you were going to draw a card. If you named the right card, you took another card. If you were wrong, you put it back. Combined with cards that let you see what's next in your library, like Sylvan Library or Preferred Selection, which was also in Mirage, it became too good. That's what could
Yeah,
have been.
I can see that.
That is what could have been. But that is not what is. Hall of Gemstone is something very different. It's 1 colorless, 2 green, enchant world. During each player's upkeep, that player chooses a color. Until end of turn, each mana-producing land produces mana of the chosen color instead of its normal color. First printing in Mirage, only printing because it's reserve list. 4.010 on Gatherer. Current market price of $11.74. High rating on Gatherer, but I'd still never see this card played. Thought about playing it for many years, never have. It will hamper any multicolor deck your opponent plays. Contender for mono green sideboards.
And it's, very strong against decks that are reactive, like counterspell decks, decks that are playing instants not on, their turn. It has an abeyance-like effect.
Especially interesting, I think, in mono green commander decks because someone out of the 4
Yeah.
people you're playing is definitely going to be playing a multicolored deck, definitely going to be playing a deck that's going to be screwed by this. Although maybe that would work poorly for you because maybe all 3 people would be mad when you played Hall of Gemstone.
I mean, it's going to be a
start
target.
you.
You put it down in a commander game and they're going to try to get rid of it. But I'm okay with that. For 3 mana, I'll put that down, make things inconvenient, and make someone waste a removal spell on it.
Come at me, bro. Come
Yeah.
at me. Yeah. I think you put this in your current
I did.
current commander deck. Next 2 cards I want to talk about. Just go over these two kind of as a pair. I asked people on the internet if they have any favorite Mirage cards they've built decks around. And 2 of the cards that most people mentioned are sometimes played in the same damn deck. They're 2 cards that are both played in the Frostbloom deck from back in the day. The first one is Natural Balance, which is a card that I'm getting more and more excited about. More I see it. It's 2 colorless, 2 green sorcery. Each player controlling 6 or more lands sacrifices enough lands to reduce his or her land total to 5. Each player controlling 4 or fewer lands may search his or her library for enough basic land to bring his or her total to 5 and put those lands into play. Those players shuffle their library afterwards. Only printing is in Mirage. It's a reserve list card. 3.806 on Gather. A current market price of $1.70. This is in the Frostbloom deck, and it's often played to make sure you get up to the 5 mana that you need to then cast Cadaverous Bloom, which is another big card that's played in the Frostbloom deck. Pros for prosperity, Bloom for Cadaverous Bloom. This also works really well with Squandered Resources, which is another card in the Frostbloom deck, which when you have those out, you can tap your land to generate mana and then sacrifice the tapped land to Squandered Resources to generate another mana for each land that you just sacrificed. And then you can use some of that mana to cast Natural Balance to go get 5 more lands.
Yeah. Or you had it out already, right?
Huh?
Or if you had the Natural Balance out already.
Well, it's a sorcery.
Oh, yeah. Whoops. Yep.
But Natural Balance, Squandered Resources, you can generate a lot of mana.
Mm-hmm.
And it also helps you fix your mana. You need to fix your mana. Good with other cards you sack lands to, like Zurin Orb too. You know, anything that you sack lands to, this can put you at 4 or fewer. And then you can go get however many lands you want, up to 5. Put those into play. I've seen some things recently pairing this with planar birth too. Land sack outlet and planar birth.
Oh, okay.
I kind of dig that. So that's natural balance. The other card is Cadaverous Bloom. Cadaverous Bloom is 3 colorless, 1 black, 1 green. Enchantment. This one's an enchantment. Choose a card in your hand and remove it from the game. Add 2 black or 2 green to your mana pool. Play this ability as a mana source. Printed in Mirage. It's reserve list. 4.375 on Gatherer. Current market price of $5.63. Use to pitch cards to generate mana. Use that mana to draw cards with prosperity. Pitch those cards to generate more mana and feed it into drain life. That's the idea behind the Proth Bloom deck. It's also just a discard outlet that will generate mana at the same time if you want a discard outlet. It's going to be a discard outlet. Get the card
I'll be
into
able
your
to remove
graveyard.
from the game.
Oh yeah, okay. It's the world's worst discard outlet. This is why I need you in the show, Alex. I can't do this by myself because I only read half the card sometimes. Not even true. I read the whole card, but I only remember the part that I want to be true. Remove it from the game. I did this the other day. I was like, oh, I should pair Varchild's War Riders with Esmir Holy Avenger. I like that pairing. And I tweeted it. And somebody was like, hold on a second. Do the survivor tokens from Varchilds, if you kill them, do they go to your graveyard? Because Esmir only gets the +1/+1 if you put creatures into your graveyard.
Oh.
And I'm like, well, forget what I just said then. It doesn't work that way. But I wanted it to. Because we were just playing, I was playing that Varchild's War Riders deck against you the other day. And I had the Granger Guildmage out, and you were like, what do you use to generate white mana? And I said, I don't have any white in the deck. I don't use the first strike ability of Granger Guildmage. I never feed a white into it to give anything first strike. I was like, I just have the Granger Guildmage in there to pay a red to ping creatures, to do 1 damage to a creature or to a player. I don't use the white ability. But I was thinking, if I did want to make that a 3-color deck, what could I put in? What would be the best cards to put in? I was like, let's maybe some legends, maybe Esmir. Doesn't work. And after I was reminded that it didn't work, I think I might have tried that before.
I love how you went right to the 3-colored legends.
That's the only reason I want to put a 3rd color in the deck. But Natural Balance, Cadaverous Bloom, they're really combo cards. They're cards that were big in tournament decks like Pross Bloom. They're still cards people brew with today. Next rare from Mirage that I like is Frenetic Efreet. This is 1 colorless, 1 blue, 1 red, 2/1 flying, summon Efreet. Pay 0, 0 mana, flip a coin. Target opponent calls heads or tails while coin is in the air. If the flip ends up in your favor, Frenetic Efreet phases out. Otherwise, bury Frenetic Efreet. Only printed in Mirage. It's a reserve list card, 3.900 on Gatherer. Current market price of $4.52. I've always liked this card, but I've always liked the Djinns and the Efreets in general from Mirage, although this is really the only playable one, the only one that I've ever really played. I think it's quite nice for a counterburn deck because you can get it out fairly easily and it flies, so it's a great chump blocker. You can also protect it with its phasing ability. So, you don't have to waste your counters protecting your creature. You can save them to counter other things and just keep this guy on the board with its phasing ability.
So this is embarrassing, but I think
Yes.
I've always misread this card. After what we were just talking about, I'm glad I helped you read a card correctly because I think for some reason I always thought this card made you do that if you used it to attack.
Oh, no. Yeah. You don't have
So
to.
you can just you don't have to use that ability. Like you can just use that to try to save its life at a 50-50 chance if you want, right?
If you use a double-sided coin too, it's 100%. You know what I'm saying?
I do. But yeah, I don't know. For some reason, I think I was thinking this card, like, you had to do that ability or part of its ability when you used it to attack or block, but you don't.
No, that's quite good. I've always liked this guy. Next interesting card from Mirage. Not one I play much, but it was always really cool. Is Flash.
This is banned in
And a lot of stuff.
Commander and Premodern, maybe?
In pre-modern, I don't know about Commander.
Okay.
Definitely in pre-modern. This is a rare, right? Did I?
I didn't think it was, but I saw it on the list you made, so
I just as soon as I pulled it up, I was like, hold on a second. It's banned in Legacy, banned in Commander, restricted in Vintage. It's banned in pre-modern.
okay. So
Confirm that it's a
Premodern
rare.
and Commander, yeah.
Confirm that it's a rare, Alex, or else I move on.
Oh. Yeah, that's why I never look at this card because it's banned in like the two formats I'm interested in.
Yeah.
It's a rare.
Okay. Don't know. I thought it wasn't.
Vindicated.
I knew it. I knew it the whole time. It's one colorless, one blue instant. Choose a creature card from your hand. Put that creature into play as though it were just played. Pay the creature's casting cost reduced by up to 2 colorless. If you cannot, bury the creature. First printing in Mirage. I also didn't realize I wrote it's reserve list. It's not. I was gonna say it's not a reserve list card. Printed in Mirage in 6th edition. That's about it. Something called Masters 25 also. I don't know what that is. Has a rating of 4.665 on Gather, a current market price of $3.43, now 63 cents actually. Banned in all sorts of formats. It's the inspiration for what would later become a keyword ability, which is the real reason I wanted to mention it. When it was first printed, all I would use it for was to flash a blocker onto the battlefield. Like, oh, you think I don't have a blocker? Well, haha, flash. You have to pay for it too. But that's not what got it banned. People started doing all sorts of crazy broken things with it. We learned many episodes ago about the Protean Hulk deck.
Yeah.
I think this is the first thing first crazy broken thing people did with Flash. They flashed Protean Hulk into the game, and you just wouldn't pay for it because you wanted it to go from play to the graveyard, and then crazy things would happen. So because of that, they had to ban the card. It has some of the most unique and striking art in a set, which is full of striking and evocative art. That's what I like most about this card. Just the bizarre art.
The dragon spirit thing looks very much like some sort of like real early computer graphics, like paint shop type creature that someone made.
Yeah. Perhaps it's how
And
he
they kind of
generated
like
that image. I don't know.
stapled it on to the picture. It's a little bit weird. I like it though. I really like the
It's very
field
weird.
with the clouds and the lightning.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it's great. I also like Hammer of Bogarden, another fantastic card that's loved for its
Remember this being hot when it came out?
playability, but also its art. Hammer of Bogarden. One colorless, 2 red. Sorcery. Hammer deals 3 damage to target creature or player. This is where it really starts cooking. You can play 2 colorless and 3 red. Return the hammer to your hand. Use this ability only during your upkeep and only if Hammer of Bogardan is in your graveyard. First printing in Mirage. Also reprinted in 6th edition, 8th edition. You see it in some World Championship decks because, like you said, it was hot at the time. Rating of 3.906 on Gather, a current market price of $3.21. It's a favorite of many, including me. in slide decks. It was in mono red land destruction decks. It was always great to have the ability to do damage multiple times with a single spell. It was a mana sink. If you just didn't have anything else to do, you brought the hammer back to your hand, you deal 3 damage to whatever you want to deal 3 damage to. These days, it's just too mana hungry to typically make the cut. So you don't even really see it. You don't even see it in
Yeah,
pre-modern,
different stuff,
really.
different options to use.
Different stuff. But it's a classic. We talked about this card last week. Polymorph. That's the next rare. We just brought this up because we were going through the art of Robert Bliss, but it's also one of the cool rares from Mirage. Polymorph is 3 colorless, 1 blue sorcery. Bury target creature. That creature's controller reveals cards from the top of his or her library until a creature card is revealed, and then puts that creature into play under his or her control as though it were just played. That player shuffles all of the revealed cards into his or her library. Reprinted in 9th edition, 6th edition, Magic 2010, 4.167 on Gather, current market price $2.64. Another beautiful piece of art, which is why we brought it up last week. Some people say there's a dick and balls hidden in this illustration. I don't see a dick and balls. Was once just a card. This is like Flash. Was once just a card, but now it's an effect. Apparently, there's all sorts of cards that have a polymorph effect built into them. You can look at the
Oh,
list on mtg.fandom.com/wiki/polymorph. We're not going to go through the list, but we talked about it the other day. We were like, oh, it's a fun little one-turn Oath of Druids. Might work out for you, might not. Could also double as potentially risky removal. You were like, oh, you could use this as removal. That is true. If they have a huge creature out you can't deal with, polymorph. Maybe they'll flip over something much smaller that you can deal with easily.
yeah.
But I think the best way to use this is in like a deck full of main lands and in one big beater.
Hmm.
You know, main lands, polymorph out your big beater.
Mainlands is an interesting idea to use with it.
Just have one giant creature.
Or creatures with if you have creatures with like fading or some sort of like negative counters, like spike feeder type spikes creatures, uh fading creatures, things that you might use for a minute and then bury them.
Yeah, because you're going to bury them anyways. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. Just keep it rolling. Roll it into something else.
Yeah.
Polymorph it
Pay it
into something
forward.
else.
Take out a loan on that creature.
Next card. Esmira, Holy Avenger. Another favorite rare
Amazing.
of mine from Mirage. 2 colorless, 1 green, 1 white, summon legend, 2/3 flying. At the end of each turn, put a +1/+1 counter on Esmira Holy Avenger for each creature put into your graveyard from play that turn. I have to keep that in mind. Each creature put into my graveyard, not every graveyard, my graveyard. I wanted to mention Esmir because she is in the Pump, my first ever commander deck that I built last year. It is old frame only. It was inspired by the 1970s documentary titled Pumping Iron, featuring Arnold Schwarzenegger, the 38th governor of California and ex-husband of Maria Shriver, and Lou Ferrigno, the actor who played the title role in the CBS television series The Incredible Hulk, which ran from 1978 to 1982. The goal of the deck is to pump my creatures to make them larger and larger as the game progresses. This card fits that strategy well. I'm drawn to linear creature-based +1/+1 strategies because I like to just chill when I play Magic. This strategy lets me chill, man. It's
Me
simple.
too. Me too.
And she's gold, and she's a legend, and she was illustrated by Rebecca Guai. So there we go. Those are probably my favorite rares from Mirage. That group we went through right there. There are also some honorable mentions. Just
Okay.
some that I wanted to run through real quick. Political Trickery, a card that I've been staring at for years, and I'm like, I want to play this in something. And I never do. And now I'm playing a 5-color commander deck, so maybe I just throw it in. Political Trickery is 2 colorless, 1 blue sorcery. Choose target land you control and target land an opponent controls. Exchange control of those lands. Never played it. Tempted to shove it into a commander deck. There's probably always something fun to swap. Next honorable mention, Waiting in the Weeds, another card that I look at often. 1 colorless, 2 green sorcery. For each untapped forest he or she controls, each player puts a cat token into play under his or her control. Treat these tokens as 1/1 green creatures. Might be fun in a commander deck like the one you're currently building, Alex. One that's you can easily generate mana with mana moles. Leave all your untapped forest out, spew out lots of 1/1s. You'll probably get more creatures out of this than anybody else.
Yeah. I think that's a good call. If I had thought about this earlier on in the deck, I probably would have put it in. I think at this point I have like too many things competing for the final few spots, and it has like a downside of helping my opponents maybe.
Yeah.
Uh, Pretty good though. I would definitely consider it for like a mono green deck.
Thinking about picking some up. They're just about $1 now. Next honorable mention, Bazaar of Wonders, 3 colorless, 2 blue, Enchant World. They don't make those anymore. Or do they?
No. No.
But they do still reprint some of them. What were the
We
conversations
talked about one or two other ones already. One or two of the other cards we talked about were Enchant Worlds. But anyways, keep going.
When Bazaar of Wonders comes into play, remove all cards in all graveyards from the game. Whenever a spell is played, counter it if a card with the same name is in play or in any graveyard. It's just a pretty unique card. I've never played it, but it looks like it could be pretty good in a mill strategy of some type. If you can mill your opponent's cards into their graveyard with the Bazaar of Wonders out, they're probably going to have a lot of cards that you're just unable to play. Potential sideboard against Oath of Druid decks in premodern.
Okay.
If they oath something out, let's say they play an Oath Terravor, put a bunch of cards into their graveyard, they bring out a huge Terravor. If you can deal with that Terravor, that's a big if. They now have a graveyard full of cards and probably a handful of cards that they can't play.
Okay.
I don't know. I'm just trying to think of something to do with this card. It's kind of
No,
fun.
I mean, I definitely agree. There's probably some fun things you could do with this in like a mill deck or some sort of lockdown deck that kind of made use of this card's ability. I don't know how to use it, but
I don't either. I just think
it'd be
mill
fun to
deck.
play with it.
Is this seems like it would be a reserve list card.
The
It is a
card
reserve
is
list card.
interesting art-wise too, because like I like the
I
art. It's cool. It kind of doesn't match like the border to me. Like these Mirage cards sort of have this border that starting to look a little different. Like I feel like if you took this art and put it on an Arabian Nights card,
Yeah.
it would look a lot better. There's something about this that makes it feel, I don't know, too new compared to the art.
And then the final honorable mention. The granddaddy of all honorable mentions. Grinning Totem. 4 colorless artifact. Spend 2 colorless, tap, sacrifice Grinning Totem, search target opponent's library for any card, put it face up in front of you. That player shuffle his or her library afterwards. You may play the card as though it were in your hand. If you do not play the card by the beginning of your next upkeep, put it into its owner's graveyard. A legendary card from Mirage. Nobody cares about it anymore.
No,
It was never in competitive decks, but
no.
it's a lot of fun to rifle through your opponent's deck for a piece of removal and then cast it to blow something off their end of the board.
Yeah. I like stuff like this. If I can like go into my opponent's library and take something or take something of theirs and use it, like that makes me very happy.
It also reminds me of the World Cup statue, championship.
But yeah, just to get it out for the 4 and then to use 2 more to tap it to activate it. It's just, I don't know, a little clunky.
But it's a fantastic casual Magic card, I think.
Yeah.
That's all like, oh man, I'm coughing in the mic. That's all. That's all I got for the Mirage rares. Those are all the Mirage rares those my favorite Mirage rares. Not all the Mirage rares. All the ones I wanted to talk about in this episode because they're my favorite. Alex, if you don't have any to add, Then we're going to move on to the last segment of the podcast today.
Yeah, I mean, I would have mentioned Spirit of the Night maybe, but
Spirit
people
of the
know what
Night.
that is and they've heard of it, so you know you could probably pass.
No.
Zerlin of the
Wait,
Claw.
hold on a second.
Huh?
People know what all these cards are already. We don't pass just because people know what these cards
Okay,
are.
so
Spirit of the Night. Alex wanted to talk about it. 6 colorless, 3
we don't
black.
need to talk
If
about
you're
it.
a sucker, you can play it for 6 colorless, 3 black. If you're like me, you play a Pharaoh Shadow, a Breath Stealer, and an Urborg Panther, each for 3 mana, and then you sacrifice those 3 to summon Spirit of the Night onto the battlefield. I did that successfully last week. I did it in 2 different games. I lost both of those games. Of course I did. Because that's a terrible way to bring a creature onto the board.
If you're like me, you Pattern of Rebirth, your oh, I forgot the name of the stupid druid that sacrifices himself
That's a
to
terrible
be
deck,
three
Alex.
mana druid. Ah, anyways.
Summon Legend 6/5 flying trample protection from black. Yes, it should have protection from white, but that's not the world we live in. First strike when attacking. Spirit of the Night is unaffected by summoning sickness.
You have my elder.
You have a mild. And great art. I love the art on
Yeah, the
Spirit of the
art's
Night.
super
Some of the
cool.
best. Some of the best.
Very I don't know what you want to call it.
Exactly.
Symbolic and esoteric and not realistic, like abstract collage art.
Zero of the Claw. This is also a fantastic casual Magic the Gathering
Meme
card.
card. It's a meme card probably, but you know,
I mean,
dragon related.
exactly. Who doesn't love
Yeah.
dragon decks? I mean, this is a dragon tutor, right?
We've seen it spike several times, just people like speculating on it and stuff, and it's probably not, you know, best card or anything, but it's kind of neat.
I mean, I think it's good. You're not going to win competitive tournaments with this or anything, but like this is a super fun card.
Mhm.
Currently $10.67. 3 colorless, 2 red, summon legend, 3/4. Pay 1 colorless and 2 red, tap it, search your library for a dragon card, put it into play as though it were just played. Shuffle your library afterwards. That creature is unaffected by summoning sickness. Remove the creature from the game at the end of it any turn. So I mean, it's a dragon tutor. Who doesn't, people are never going to stop playing dragon decks.
Mhm.
And this guy's a dragon tutor.
The potential to get better in the future forever.
It's not going to get worse.
Yeah.
Well, they could, no, it won't get worse. I was going to say, well, they could print a card that's better than this, which they probably already have, but that doesn't make this card worse necessarily. This card is just what it is still. Just there are other options that are better.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Tombstone Stairwell, by the way, was an enchant world.
Okay.
Yeah.
I should have known that because somebody on Twitter just the other day said, I like this card. I just hate enchant worlds.
Oh.
And I asked him why. And I figured this is what he was going to say. They're just too easy to get rid of.
Hmm.
It's like, I hate it when I play this and somebody plays a Concordant Crossroads and
But see, that's kind of like
get rid
the
of it.
reason why I like enchant worlds is
I
because my
know.
enchantment can act as a removal for someone else's enchantment.
It's exactly what I thought when he said that because like that's why I like to play Concordant Crossroads.
Yeah.
As somebody who's building an old school mono green deck, the Abyss is an enchant world, right?
Could be. I think
I mean,
so.
I think that's how you get rid of the Abyss in mono green when you don't have disenchant. I mean, you could play Tranquility or something.
Mhm.
But if you're playing an Abyss deck and your whole purpose in life is just to play out green creatures and beat down, uh, it's more fun just to have 4 Concordant Crossroads in your sideboard.
I'm watching you for search for
I,
Tranquil.
I don't know why I was thinking Tranquility in my head, and I started searching for Tranquility instead of the Abyss. Yeah, it's an enchant world. So it's much more fun just to play Concordant Crossroads in your sideboard. If you come across an Abyss deck, sideboard those in, blast their Abyss off the board for 1 mana, and then they got hasty greenies coming at their face.
Easty Greenies.
Know what I'm saying? Okay.
And by the way, I was toying with mentioning it, but Forsaken Wastes from Mirage, which we haven't mentioned, is another enchant world.
Another enchant world.
I'd put that as maybe just below honorable mention. It's a card I've like wanted to try to use before,
Same.
but
Same.
had never have.
I bought some and I've never used them also.
Yeah.
Anywho, that's the Abyss. I love this card. I've
And
never
that's
had one.
Mirage. Yeah, Abyss is
So
pretty gnarly.
so good. Can't believe it's $1,000. What is wrong with this world?
Now there's a
Doesn't
card
matter.
that fits like the border and the frame and the art and the text box all fit together. It just
It's
looks
just
good.
beautiful to look at. It's
Yeah.
beautiful to look at. Segment 2. Segment 2 is the Old Mage Commander Corner. This is where we build our Commander decks. Last year, we built our first Old Frame Commander decks. They were really our first Commander decks ever. This year, we decided to build a second Commander deck. We do this slowly on the show.
I feel much better about this one.
They're coming together. I feel worse about this one.
Mm.
But you know what? Your first one was a 5-color deck. You feel worse about it. My second one is a 5-color deck. I feel worse
True.
about it. It's just harder to build 5-color decks.
Yeah. We've
We're
kind of
gonna be-
switched positions. My deck's much more like your first one.
Yeah. We're going to be wrapping these up soon. Should be done with them in July. I'm pretty much coming to the end of all the stuff I want to add to it. And then I just have to fill it out with my lands. And then I'll have 100 cards. Then I need to pick up a few of these. I haven't purchased all these yet. But the second commander deck I was building was a Togatog. I saw a Togatog. I was like, oh, this will be fun. A nice casual commander deck, kind of a goofy commander deck, something that would be exciting and challenging to build and to play. As it's evolved over the course of the last few months, it's become like pretty enchantment focused. I'm not putting all of the old frame ATOGs in here. I'm putting most, but not all of them. And in my favorite ones are the ones that eat enchantments. So like Phantatog, Thaumatog. Those are the two that eat enchantments, right? Yeah. Phantatog, Thaumatog. And because I saw a couple ATOGs that ate enchantments. Oh, or I'm forgetting the best one, Ortog. Ortog. I'm like, okay, so 3 of my best ATOGs eat enchantments. Why don't I build a deck that's kind of enchantment focused? So I'm stuffing it with enchantments. I'm also putting some enchantresses in here to give me some card draw when I play the enchantments. Today I'm going to add a few more enchantments to this deck. I have 14 enchantments so far. Today I'm going to add Oversold Cemetery, which is something that somebody suggested to me in the comments of a previous episode. And I was like, I like that. And I especially liked it when I looked up the price, because at some point this was like a $15 or $20 card. It had been reprinted recently and the price has come down quite significantly. So you can get it for like $1 to $5, depending on which printing you purchase. Originally printed in Onslaught. And it says $3.50 right now.
I like that Dominaria art, by the way.
It is good, yeah. It was
But
a
I like
rare.
this card. This is something I've been experimenting with. I keep throwing this into decks.
It's a rare from Onslaught, 1 colorless, 1 black enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you have 4 or more creature cards in your graveyard, you may return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. So, you don't get to bring all your creatures back. They don't go straight into the battlefield. They come to your hand. You still have to replay them. But in a deck where ideally I'm going to be sacrificing multiple ATOGs to a Togatog, it will be nice to have an enchantment that will allow me to, from time to time, bring one back to my hand and replay it. And if I don't want to do that, I can sacrifice it to Phantatog or Ortog or Thaumatog during a big attack where I want to sacrifice a bunch of enchantments. So I like the addition of that enchantment to this deck. I'm also going to add Conspiracy. This is something I was going back and forth on. I think I'm just going to go with it. Kind of high casting cost, which is the reason I was going back and forth on. Conspiracy is a enchantment I think originally from Acadian Masks. Yeah. 3 colors, 2 black. When it comes into play, choose a creature type. I will choose ATOGs. Creature cards you own that aren't in play, creature spells you control, and creatures you control are the chosen type. So, you know, I could be sitting here with my Atog on the board, and maybe I have a clone out, and then I cloned one of my opponent's creatures. I have 2 enchantresses out. I have a Birds of Paradise. My opponent's all like, oh, you got no ATOGs to feed to your Atog to pump. And then bam, Conspiracy. Although if I play Conspiracy and turn my 0-1 Birds of Paradise into an ATOG and then sacrifice it to an Atog to get +X until end of turn, well, X equals the sacrifice ATOG's power, which is 0 in the case of the Birds of Paradise. Doesn't really do much for me. But also, Argothian Enchantress, what's the power on that? 0-1, shit. That doesn't do anything for me either. Ephemeral Enchantress, is she 0-2? 1-2.
1-2.
I get 1 out of that. I get whatever my clone is, whatever I've stolen with the Preacher. So I still think I have some options here. Misform Ultimus. Well, that's already an ATOG. Now that I'm looking at the rest of my creature set, I might take this out next week. But for now, I have Conspiracy in the deck. And then the third card I wanted to add is also enchantment related. Academy Rector.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Not Academy Drake. You know, I got some good enchantments in here. Some enchantments that I'm going to want from time to time. Might want that Carpy Artifact to copy something important. I might want that Cover of Darkness to rush through with unblockable ATOGs. I might want Sterling Grove to protect other enchantments I have out. I might want Wonder, Karmic Justice to give me a little bit of, or Propaganda to give me a little bit of defense, you know? If I have a Academy Rector on my side, she can help me tutor for whatever enchantment I need at the time. 3 colorless, 1 white creature. 1-2. When it's put into a graveyard from play, you may remove Academy Rector from the game. If you do, search your library for an enchantment card and put that card into play, then shuffle your library.
Heck
Those are my additions for today. Oversold Cemetery, Conspiracy, which I'm probably going to take out after I looked at the power of all of my other creatures that aren't ATOGs in this deck. And then Academy Rector.
I feel like there might still be something else you can do with Conspiracy, though. I have to think about that for a second.
I don't know. It's good in some decks, but not in this one. Not the way I've built this with all my non-ATOGs are so low power.
I mean, like really niche scenario though, you might be able to like turn all of your ATOGs into something else that's benefiting from a board state, you know?
I could, but that's just you know, maybe that will work out for me depending on what my opponents are playing.
Yeah. Super niche.
Super niche. That's a deck. My Atog commander deck. It is still in progress. Alex, you had a mono green deck you were building this year. Around Seaton. The Druid deck. The Druid
Yes, this is
Centaur
my
deck.
mono green Druid deck. It's part elf, part Druid. Some enchantments.
Part Centaur.
Part Centaur. It's like the Centaur is a good metaphor for the deck overall. Part one thing, part another.
Seaton Crows and Protector is your commander.
How many cards total, Steve?
We're getting up there.
Let's refresh. I know. 90, more than 92? I hope not.
93.
Oh no.
91.
Okay. 91.
I
Good.
lied. Yeah.
Because I have about 12 cards I still want to put in this deck.
Okay.
13, 14 cards, maybe.
Well, nobody says you can't go over 100.
I don't think you can. I think
really?
in Commander, I think it's like strictly.
Oh, okay.
I think I might be wrong.
Well, nobody says other than the rules.
Make it 100.
I was just assuming, we usually play 60 card format, so and nobody, no, I mean, no, you can always put 61, you can put 62, you could play a deck with
Right, right.
3,472 cards if you wanted. They're just
There
hard to
might still
shuffle.
be an upper limit. I think there's an upper limit in like 60 card deck
Yeah,
tournaments, like used to be
3,742, like I
100
just said.
or something, but I don't know what it is now. Okay, today I'm doing an elf day, Steve.
Okay.
We have some elves already. I feel like I could use one or two more. Some of my cards have elf synergy, and I want to make sure I have enough
Yeah.
elves to make that stuff happen. Um,
Can I interrupt for a second?
yeah,
You knew this. I probably knew it too and then forgot. A commander deck has to be 99 cards plus the commander for a total of 100.
okay,
It cannot be any more or less.
yeah,
Didn't realize you couldn't add a couple more. Okay.
yeah. So I'm stuck. Um, Considering that, let's take out a card on our creatures at the very bottom. Let's take out Werebear.
Get the fuck out.
Get out of here, Werebear.
I liked the werebear. The more I see people talk about shit about the werebear, the less I like the werebear.
Better in a 60 card deck, I think, and better in on this topic. Let's also remove Croson Restorer, I
Oh,
think.
disgusting.
Those are two of my threshold cards. I have a few graveyard like recycling cards, so I feel like maybe I should lean one way or the other. Let's get rid of the threshold stuff. Both
Where,
of these cards are a little underwhelming.
I don't know
Werebear
what
will
Croson
help me late
Restorer is
game.
or where. Oh, right here. Okay.
Yeah.
Beautiful art on this druid.
Yeah, it's a nice looking card. I hate to get rid of a druid, but I don't know.
3 mana with a threshold ability. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay,
early game, it's just going to be a mana elf for me. Uh,
it is done.
okay, get rid of those. It gives me some room. Today we're doing elves, Steve.
Okay.
Today we're doing elves. I have two cards that I think I found recently. I saw one of these cards before, forgot about it, and relearned it, and that is Will Wisher.
This is a good one. I like Will Wisher.
I'm not leaning into this life gain strategy, but the Will Whiffer, the Will Whiffer can
Mhm.
tap to give me a life for each elf on the battlefield, not just my own elves, but other people's elves as well.
Yes, I can. How many elves do you have in this deck right now? So I know
Right
you're going
now,
to
I
add
have
more.
like 7 or 8, I think.
Caller of the Cross, an elf. There's one. Two, Finhorn. Three, Llanowar.
Llanowar.
Four, Priest of Titania. Five, Quirion Ranger. Six, Quirion Sentinel.
I think Verdurin is an elf.
Really?
I think so. One or two of them are elves, even though they don't say. Whenever I play this
Seven is
deck, I'm
Will
gonna have
Wisher.
to have a list of my druids and my elves next to me so I know which cards count as which. No, I was wrong about that. She's a human druid.
So you have seven elves in this deck so far.
Yeah, seven-ish elves.
Okay.
But I have a few cards that can untap a creature and then reuse it.
Mhm.
So with this
Yes.
card, I can keep tapping it to give myself some life every turn.
Yes, you can do that.
Not a big deal, but it might come in handy, might help me prolong my life, uh, annoy my opponents, make them remove it, something like that. So I'll try it for now. Another one is Titania's Chosen.
Titania's Chosen. Don't know what this is.
It's a 3 casting cost, 1 green, 2 colorless, 1/1. Elf Archer from Urza's Saga. Whenever a player successfully casts a green spell, put a +1/+1 counter on Titania's Chosen.
Okay.
So anything I do pumps it, and anything green one of my other commander opponents does pumps it as well.
Okay.
And it's enough. Third card, let's add Heart Warden.
Heart Ward.
Heart Warden. This is an elf and a druid. It's not overwhelming, but it's an elf and a druid. So I'll put it in for now. Maybe it'll come out. 1 green, 1 colorless. 1/1. You can tap for a green, or you can pay 2 and sacrifice it to draw a card. So it's just a little elf druid manimal body.
Mhm.
I can take it out if I want to pick a different one.
Helps you early on, and when you don't need it anymore for its mana ability, you can just draw a card.
Yeah, or if someone's going to kill it, then I can pay and draw the card even though it's on its way to the graveyard. All right, here's where it's getting tricky. I think my last elf for the day is Kaiza.
Why didn't I know? Why didn't I know Kaiser was an elf?
She is both an elf and a druid.
The hell?
Yep. Gives all of my green creatures +1/+1.
She's an elf?
Yep. I'll double check that in real time.
Are you sure?
Yes. Legendary creature elf druid.
Oh my god. Okay.
2/3, all green creatures you control, including her, get +1/+1. So she's a 3/4. And all my greenies get +1/+1. I have token generators in here. I think it's a pretty good fit. The only thing I'm worried about is now I'm getting into several high mana cost creatures. I'm worried, I don't know what the limit is on your big creatures.
Well, your deck can generate more mana than most,
It can,
probably.
and I have a few cheat effects like natural order and stuff.
Yeah.
But I think I'm up to about 6 or 7 big creatures, and now I'm starting to be there's 1 or 2 more I kind of want to add, so I'm worried that I'm getting to the threshold.
Yeah. How many do you have? How many are 5 and above? 1 and Jamal, not Jamal, Kamal. It's 2
Kaiza,
and Kaiser.
Burden Force, Weatherseed Treefolk,
3 and Namada. 4 and
Sylvan
Nut Collector.
5,
5 and Seaboard Muse.
and Namada Grove Guardian is 6.
7, 8. I'm
Nut
counting 8.
Collector,
Counting 8 at 5 and above.
yeah. So,
It is a bit
and there's
much.
1 more I want to add. I don't know. I'll talk about that next week maybe, but
Almost a third of your creatures are 5 mana or above.
hmm.
Hmm. Hmm.
Hmm.
Maybe you do some cutting. Maybe.
Yeah, I don't want an opening hand that's like 4 or 5 giant
Yeah.
creatures that I can't
Yeah.
cast right away.
Okay. Okay, Alex.
All right.
Wonderful additions to the deck this week. And with that, I think we are done with episode 91 of the Old Mage MTG podcast. We're done for now with our review of Mirage. I'm sure we're going to talk about a lot of Mirage related stuff many times in the future. But we've now gone through our favorite commons, uncommons, and rares in the set. If you're still listening, thank you so much for listening this long. If you haven't already, please like the video. Please subscribe to us on YouTube, on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, on Google Podcasts, on Castbox. If you're like me and you use Castbox, I don't think that many people use Castbox. We only have 2 subscribers on Castbox, Alex, and I'm one of those subscribers. If you're that
on
other subscriber, shout
Ronnie's
out to
apps?
you. On Ronnie Snaps? What is it?
Ronnie's apps.
Ronnie's apps. Ronnie's apps?
Yeah.
Okay. If you listen to the podcast on Ronnie's apps, join us along with Alex. It'll just be you and Alex using that app. That's about it. I just did a sniff into the mic because I'm still a little bit sick. I started taking me antibiotics yesterday. Not last yesterday.
One of those
just
days
yesterday.
in the past haze.
It has been a haze like the last 3 or 4 days, actually. I took a few days off work and I'm like, I'll be fine. And then I just kept feeling shittier and shittier until yesterday. I was like, I need to go see the doctor because now it's the end of my days off and I have to go back to work tomorrow and I can't wake up feeling even worse. And I woke up this morning feeling better. So hopefully I'm not destroying all my natural flora for no fucking reason. Not hopefully, I don't mean don't hope that I have an infection, but I did have an infection. So hopefully the antibiotics are fighting the infection and I'm actually getting better from the antibiotics. It would suck if it doesn't suck to get better naturally, but it would suck if I was just going to get better naturally and I took antibiotics for no reason. You know what I'm saying, Alex?
I do.
It's a
I
moxicillin. That's
followed that neurotic train of thought.
moxicillin, man. That's some tough shit. Fucks up your gut for a little while, especially people like me who have bad guts already. Last time I took a moxicillin, I don't even want to tell you what happened, Alex. It ended with me getting my third colonoscopy already before the age of 40,
Oh, Jesus.
by the way.
Jesus.
And with that said, we've come to the end of the episode. Talk to you all next week.
I ain't gonna do this anymore. That's all for me. Goodbye.